Good morning. Good to see all of you here today. My name is Debbie Johnson, and I am a patient of Maximized Living and Dr. Ernst. I just want to share a little bit about my story and where I'm at. 8 months ago, I was sitting back on that third row where y'all are sitting today. My life pretty much was a life of misery. At 59, I hurt every day. I went to work, I came home, and my recliner was my best friend. My husband and I ate out every night because I hurt too much to stand and cook. Life was miserable. My mother had died at 49. My brother had died from complications of diabetes at 46. My father had 2 heart attacks and 4 major strokes between 54 and 74. I knew that unless there was a life-changing moment, I was going to be the next family statistic. In January, I heard a commercial on WBT for the seminar, and it said, "New life, new you." I dialed the number, and as my normal course of action, I immediately hung up the phone because I thought, I'll call later, knowing later would never come. But I dialed the number, and I hung up, not knowing it registered missed call on Dr. Ernst's phone. The next morning, my phone rang, and it was a number I didn't know, and out of curiosity, I answered it, and it was Dr. Ernst. And for the first time in years, I felt a thread of hope. I'd tried every diet. I had yo-yoed in the yo-yo and the seesaw. You keep going higher and higher until at my highest weight, I was 264 pounds of misery. That was a life-changing day for me. I came to the seminar. I listened to the information. And I sat back there, and at the end of the seminar, I cried because I was so overcome with fear of failure. I was so afraid that this was not going to work. But I took control of my emotions, and I stepped forward, and I decided, I'm going to try this. And I started the program. My blood pressure is down. My A1C is down. I sleep better. I don't ache. I have returned to doing hobbies. In May, I went bowling for the first time in 14 years. I had previously been told, I've had 2 back surgeries on the same disc, and I'd previously been told, don't ever touch another bowling ball. Dr. Ernst said, if you feel like you can do it, go for it. I went for it, and I'm glad I did, because I have 5 grandchildren, and now I can take them bowling and not sit there and watch. I am living life again for the first time in over 15 years. I am embracing life. I do projects around the house again. I recently took a window and repurposed it into a great fireplace piece for my fireplace with the wreath and the flowers, and I made a fireplace screen out of pallets. I made a headboard out of pallets. I am up, moving, living life again. Last week, I celebrated my 60th birthday. One of the attorneys in our firm walked by, and he said, I can't believe you're telling people your age. And I looked at him and I said, for the first time, I feel like I'm alive again. For the first time in my 50s, I never felt as good as I feel today. And it is because I embraced the program. I changed the way I eat. Totally changed. I quit buying into the cheap food, the fast food. Parties was my friend food. And I made the change, and I'm glad I did. I feel so much better. Again, my A1C is down, my blood pressure is down. My resting heart rate is down. I sleep so much better. I have the Fitbit app, and I track how I sleep every night. And I'm amazed at how far I've come. I'm down 4 dress sizes in 8 months. Wow. I am down 50 pounds from my highest weight. I feel alive again, thanks to this program, eating right, and learning what is the proper way to go. You see, we have 2 choices in life. We can sit here today and we can stay where we're at. Or we can, as the term carpe diem in Latin says, seize the day. This is your day to take this information you're going to hear and make a life-changing decision to embrace health and embrace life. Franklin Roosevelt said in his first inaugural speech, the only thing you have to fear is fear itself. I let fear kill me. I let fear put me in a rut. And does anybody know what the definition of a rut is? It is a grave with the ends kicked out. My family watched, and my aha moment was when my husband looked at me and said, I feel like I'm watching you wait to die. In January, I made the decision it's time to live again. And now I'm living life as never before. And I'm so thankful that God brought me to this very room to hear this information and to seize it. Dr. Ernst is a duly licensed doctor in chiropractic medicine as well as functional medicine. He was the certified chiropractor for the Olympic team, the judo and wrestling team and the Olympic team for 2012 in London. His office, Maximized Living, is right down the street. His staff is phenomenal.
Yes.
They are an amazing group of people that I love seeing on a weekly basis. I love coming in and talking with them and the energy I get from them. Let me challenge you. Listen and grab it today. It is your time to seize the day. And with that, I introduce Dr. Ernst.
I'll be honest. That's a little hard to follow, isn't it? Can you guys hear me through the mic? Is it good? Is it on? Oh, it is on. Let's see, maybe we can move it closer. It's still a little low. Maybe Tom can. You guys all have met Tom, yes? Either through 1,000 texts, lots of emails. Without Tom, I don't think we would exist. We wouldn't be here today without Tom. Check, 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 test. Is that better? Okay, great. So listen, I love being here. And I love doing talks. If anything, I think I've counted it out. It's my almost 500th, is that a word? 500th talk. So I've gotten over 500 talks. And you know, today is a special day, partly because it's my daughter's birthday today. And I had some people say, like, seriously, you would do this on your daughter's birthday? But I believe that I've put here on this planet to share a mission and a vision and some hope for all of you. I know that each of you are sitting in a seat by divine appointment today, so it would actually, in my world, be selfish to reschedule for something like my daughter's birthday, because we can always celebrate this afternoon or tonight or something like that. Does that make sense? So when I do say, though, that I have to skedaddle and keep everything on time, it's partly because I have to go to a birthday party, and then I have to change and get down to WBT and do my radio show today at 3 o'clock. So there's I got a full day today, and I love it. I love it. So I had sent some emails out, and forgive me because my clicker also doesn't seem to be working. There it goes. And I created this curious list, and I'm going to tell you guys what's on my list in a moment. But are you guys ready to have some fun today? Yes. So I'm going to try to get inside of your brains and rattle your world. I'm a firm believer that your body has the ability to heal by itself. And just out of a show of curiosity, with show of hands, who currently either has been diagnosed or is in the middle of having diabetes right now, out of just curiosity? I would just like to see, like, because obviously it's a diabetic talk, so I'm assuming the majority of the room is going to be that. But who is has had this for at least 2 years, out of curiosity, just to see, like, okay, 5. I'm just trying to find out, like, how long have we been dealing with this? You know, maybe 10 years, 15 years, okay? So diabetes is a big issue, and it relates a lot to this. And you might look at that and go, what does that have to do with diabetes? But I'd like us to pretend to be medical doctors right now. Can you guys do that? Okay, so I don't have to, like, swear you in or anything, but you're going to be a medical doctor, and you're going to diagnose the condition that we have in this environment. So somebody help me out. What's the diagnosis? Flat tire. Good job. So when we have a diagnosis, though, does that tell us what caused the problem? So you have diabetes. Okay, great, but we want to know the cause, don't we? Because if we know the cause of diabetes, then we can act on it, and then we can fix it. So somebody help me out. What's the cause of a flat tire?
Low air pressure.
Well, I heard low air pressure, but that's not the cause. That's the effect. Okay, good, I like it. What was it? Nail or screw, so something punctured a hole into this, or, you know, somehow it's leaking, right? So maybe the valve is broken. Somehow the air is getting out. Would you agree? So the cause is there's a lack of air on the inside, or a hole, sorry, that's leading to the symptom, which is Okay, so here we go. Ready? What's the symptom of diabetes? High blood, what? Oh, there's a ton though, isn't there? It's not just high blood sugar. Isn't it things like I'm having difficulty losing weight, maybe my hands are numb and tingling, I'm having vision disturbances, I'm tired all the time, I'm forgetful, lots of symptoms. I'm thirsty, I'm hungry, I can't seem to stop eating food. Would you agree? Okay, but the classics that we're all taught is your blood sugar goes up, your A1C, which we'll talk about today, goes up, and so does everything else, cholesterol, triglycerides, all this sort, right? So the symptom here is there's no air, and for diabetes, the symptom is this, but don't they tell you that's what's causing it? Don't they say, well, the reason you have diabetes, the cause is your blood sugar's too high? Wrong. That's the symptom of having diabetes. So technically, diabetes is not a disease. It is a symptom. So you got to get this. You got to get this. It is not a disease. It is a symptom. It's just a name. It's a label that was placed on either you or someone you know because something's not right. Now, how would we fix this? How would we fix this? Well, you got to find it first, don't you? And that's only if it's a hole. What if the stem is broken? You guys understand the analogy? Find where the leak is coming from, correct? Now, how do we fix this? Find where it's coming from. But do the doctors do that? So that's what I'm going to teach you today is how to find where the cause of your diabetes is coming from, because when you go after the cause, your body can fix itself. Now, let's just use an analogy. If I skip going after the cause, and I address the symptoms, I push medications. It's going to be weird, but I change your diet, symptom control, right? That will only mask the problem. If I pump air into this, will it inflate? Yes. Will it look better? Yes. Will the numbers improve? Yes. Are you cured? Uh-oh. But I got an email from someone that said this. Ready? They said, Dr. Ernst, I'm coming to your seminar only because after taking medications for 20 years, all my numbers look good, yet I still feel terrible and I can't lose weight. How can that be? How can I have normal blood sugar, normal A1C, but I still have problems? So the problem is, if you address symptoms only, if I pump this up with air, it'll work for a couple hours or a couple days, but then as it deflates out, I would just do what? Pump it up with air again. I would refill my prescription. See the analogy? Now, what if we get really scientific-y? What if we say, well, hey, it's 2017. Did you know we have the ability to install a small air generator right there, and it'll run a sensor into the tire, and it'll sense when the pressure gets too low, and it'll kick on automatically, and it'll pump the air from the outside in, and it will stabilize you. It will keep you full. It'll keep the air going. We'll determine when your sugars have dropped, and we'll just run this needle into your abdomen, and we'll detect it, and we'll pump the insulin in for you. Symptom control. Symptom control. Raise your hand if you want to know how to fix diabetes. Get rid of it. I'm talking like 90 days gone, right? So all of you are here, I know, for a divine reason, because what I'm going to do today is show you how to stop filling the tire air. Does diet cure diabetes? No. I know it's hard, right? It's hard, isn't it? I thought a friend of mine juiced some crazy juice cleanse, and she said her sugars got better. Well, probably during the cleanse, but check in with her 90 days later, and what's going to happen? You'll be right back there unless she juice cleanses for the rest of her life. Do medications fix this? No, they're just but if your belief that your diabetes is better is because your numbers look good, then you're going to think it fixed the problem. Does that make sense? And I have someone here that says, how do I stop taking medications? I have somebody who says, is diet good for diabetes? I have someone who said, does removing meat reverse diabetes? How do I eliminate my diabetes? How do I lower my A1C? How do I lower it and stop using insulin? How do I get back to the point of not needing medications? Guys, did you guys see the email I sent saying, can you please tell me why you're coming today? Okay, these are the answers. Now, I got 40 answers. And if I'm doing a quick thing, maybe there's 40 people here. These are the top ones. I categorize them. How do I get my blood sugars as low as possible naturally? Since we must eat carbs, what's the best carb to eat? That's a good one, right? Since we want to lose the stubborn belly fat and do it in a method that works, because I've done everything, I can't lose weight. I've recently gained 15 pounds. I need to lose weight. Here's one. My doctor said I'm pre-diabetic, but didn't say what to do because it's not diabetic, so they didn't give me any drugs. It's crazy, isn't it? Crazy. And I'll give you guys a moment for me to ask what you're here for, but I believe wholeheartedly that God put you here in this room for a reason today. You had an option. You could have gone somewhere else and you decided to come here. I could have rescheduled this, but I decided to keep it for you. I've prayed over every single one of your seats, and I know for a fact that if I could somehow take all the years of training and clinical experience and life experience for myself and just hopefully deposit it inside of you and have you take an action step, I know guaranteed you're going to get better. I've seen it day in and day out. I've seen diabetes literally gone in as little as 90 days. Gone, 90 days. 6 months, gone. It can happen. And the way we do it is by changing and taking a different look. What if everything you've been told is an absolute lie? And I hate to say it, it is. It is. Okay? What if your insurance knew that there were tests that would show you the cause, but the way to prevent you from getting them would be to say, well, they're not covered. You'll have to pay for them. Oh, and they're $1,000, $2,000, $5,000, $10,000. I met with a lady yesterday in my office, and she said, I'm so taken aback because I went to my doctor with your blood test, your list. She was brand new with us. She's like, I went to them, and I said, hey, how much would it cost for you to run this test that my chiropractor ran? And they said, well, first of all, there are things on here that we don't normally test for, so we have to pull this book and look, and it was over $1,000. One test. And I paid for that test for her, over $1,000. And it boggles my mind because sometimes we think medicine is the answer, when in fact it's basically the best way to get into debt, according to reports today, the best way to never find the cause and just to cover stuff up. And then honestly, it's the best way to age faster, decay quicker, toxify more. Everybody understand that? I'm not against medicine. There are moments when you need it in your life, but I'm against the idea that it's a life sentence. Do you guys know what I'm talking about? Like, so how long do I have to take this? Okay, and it's not designed to be that way. You have a system that was put inside of you. You have an ability to heal, and what I see often is that it's just simply interfered with. Let me give you an analogy, okay? Does gravity exist to the point where if I drop this, that pen's going to hit the floor? Okay? It's a governing law, yes? None of you would have to argue with me on that. Okay? But if I interfere with its ability to drop by having a level of interference in it, why didn't it hit the floor? Not because gravity doesn't work, but just because something's in the way. Now, this is going to blow your mind. Your body has the ability to heal. It's a governing law. If you don't believe me in this, break a bone, just set it so it stays in place, and how many medications do you have to take for that thing to heal? So it does it by itself. Cut your skin. After it bleeds, after it clots through, and after it starts to reconnect, all you need is time, and it'll automatically correct itself. The difference is that for some of you, that process takes longer than others. And it has to do with your ability, the inborn repair that you've been given. I believe that there's that something inside each of you that's there, but it's covered up. It's hiding. It's been neglected. And part of it comes from the idea that what we do that we think is good for us is actually a complete lie from the enemy. I'll give you a classic example. Is saturated fat good or bad for your body? I'll just throw it out. Is saturated fat good or bad for your body? Just go with your gut. What have they told you? Okay? Is butter good for your body?
Yes.
Okay, now we're learning though, aren't we? What about this? Cholesterol. Do you want your cholesterol to be really high? Oh, see, so some of you are educated. I love this, right? So we used to think that certain things were bad, and now we know they're good. Here's a tough one. Is canola oil a good, healthy oil to cook with? Oh, it's the worst oil on the planet. But for some of you, you might be going, I thought that was the best oil on the planet. So I have to sort of retrain you into what real health is, and if we do that, you're going to have great success. Does that make sense? So we don't want to fill the tire. We don't want to take medications because that's what you guys are asking me to help you get off of. We want to have that life, right? I mean, I don't know about you, but when I hear that story every single time, I'm like, yes, right? It's that. It's the essence. How many of you would like to be, how many of you would like to be here coming up on my next talk, right? So we'll make that happen then, yes? Okay. So I had this long list of all these things why you guys wanted me to be here today. Everything from how do we eat better to reverse our diabetes? Should we remove meat from our diet? We're going to talk about that. I can't even read my own handwriting. Oh, are diet drinks good for a diabetic? That's a big one. We have to talk about that. How do I get rid of my diabetes? How do I lower my blood sugar, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? Why don't you guys tell me a little bit about why you came here today? So somebody share something with me. Doesn't matter. Yes, go for it.
I had diabetes, or was diagnosed about 9 years ago.
Okay.
And when I first started treatment, lost weight, paid very close attention to the diet, took the medications, and, made some progress.
Correct.
But it just incrementally came back and added more drugs to it.
Oh, right.
And it's, I'm up to 3 different medications now, and I'm retiring in about 9 months, and I don't want to do this anymore.
Okay. Can anybody resonate with that? Right? So, often, can I, and I'll piggyback off yours if I can do that. What was your first name, sorry?
Joe.
Joe? Nice to meet you. So here's the stories that I hear. It's exactly that. And usually the first start of it was when the diagnosis came, probably there was sort of like well, how do I manage this? What do I do? And when they give you the medication, isn't it sometimes like they almost feel as if they're saving your life? Right? They're like, we caught this. Thank God we can give you this drug. And sometimes people feel somewhat relieved that they can take this medication and it helps. But then your story is all too classic. 1 turned into 2, turned into 3. And why is that? Can you guys help me? Because they're going after the symptoms and not the, right? So if I keep pumping air in and it keeps flattening out faster and faster and faster, then eventually I'm like, well, I have to somehow supplement that. And then when that doesn't work, so I get that. But my curious question is, why do you want to stop the medications? Like, why would you be okay? Why would you not be okay continuing that same path versus going, I'm looking for a better way? For what reason?
Because the medications don't continue to work the way they say they will.
Okay. So, and I get that. I guess what I'm asking is it the fear that 3 becomes 5 becomes 10 becomes I'm running out of my life now?
At the very beginning, I wanted to not have to take medication.
Okay. Because what does the medication do? Okay, well, there's that. Side effects, yes, right? So that's what I'm thinking. I guess what I'm kind of hearing in you is I want to have her life. I want to be free. I want to have hope. I want to not be tied down to having to take something on a daily basis. I want an answer for my life, right? And that's absolutely something that can happen today, absolutely. But the key is we got to stop treating symptoms, and we have to do what? Go to the cause. Now, I'm really curious. I'll throw this out, and I just want to see if anybody's been paying attention lately. What is it that's the actual cause of diabetes? I'd just like to see. What's that?
Your pancreas.
Well, okay, so let's run with this real quick. You said your pancreas, but what about it? Doesn't produce enough insulin. But I'm going to ask you a question. Is that a symptom or is that a cause? That's still a symptom. I love where you're going with it, but the symptom would be I don't have enough insulin, therefore my blood sugars go up. Symptoms. Now here's the question. If it's the pancreas, I'm just going to run with this, why is the pancreas not producing enough?
Old age.
That's what a lot of people think, but it's absolutely not, because I know some people who are 90 that don't have diabetes. If old age created it, there would be this magical number that all of a sudden you would hit and then boom, you'd have diabetes. If it was the cause, would you agree? If a nail causes a hole, I can run 100 tires over a nail and what will always happen? I'll get a flat tire. If old age caused diabetes, as soon as you hit old age, whatever that is, you would have diabetes. So it can't be the cause. Does that make sense? It's a big one, right? What about my genes? But here's what we've learned today. Did you guys know that we all have genes for diabetes? The question is the gene on or is it off? On or off. Did you know that you can turn your genes on and off based upon one thing you do in your life? But how many of us think, because my mom has diabetes, I'm destined to get it? And what they're actually determining now, they're doing studies. This is going to rock your world. They take genetically bred mice that are destined to have diabetes, and then they do what I'm going to teach you today, and they see the diabetes go away. Genetically programmed to have diabetes. And they're going, as long as we do these 3 things, boom, it's gone. Yet, they don't share that with mainstream media to say, we found the cure for diabetes. Why is that? Because it's not a drug. There's no drug that does it. And guess what? We're all looking for that new drug, aren't we? Oh, if we could just come out with a new one, I'd take that one and my diabetes would be gone. But all the drugs go after the symptoms and they don't address the cause. Here's the question. What's causing the pancreas not to do its job? Yeah, well, there's something inside the pancreas that's making it not produce it properly. But all we have to do is we have to find out what makes the pancreas do its job. And remember, we have to look for what's interfering with that. And there's only 3 things. And I'm going to teach them to you today because apparently no one has ever taught them to you. By the way, not only do these 3 things cause diabetes, but they also cause high blood pressure. They cause, thyroid issues. They cause cancer. They cause headaches. They cause everything. Because if you were to look at it as a non-functioning pancreas causes diabetes, well, then a non-functioning thyroid causes thyroid disease. So what's causing the thyroid not to function? The same 3 things. You guys get it? It's real simple. So simple. In fact, that's why I'm so excited that you're here today, because all we have to do is understand those 3 things, and then we are set. Now, I'm going to continue this process, okay? What else are we here for, out of curiosity? What do you guys want? Like, if you could leave here today going, I got it, what would that be? Yes. Well, I like that answer, right? Because often, because you know what?
The restrictions, everything that they throw at you.
Yes. And doesn't it feel sometimes like it's almost overwhelming? Like there's so much stuff to do. I got to do this and I got to do that. And many times we're following advice from organizations, American Diabetes Association. We see stuff on Google. We look all over the place. And before you know it, you're overwhelmed and you're like, it can't be that complicated. And their answer actually is really quite simple. So here's what I'd like to do with you. I'd like you to, boy, my clicker's not working at all. Oh, I let the best part out, didn't I? Okay. I want to show you my first daughter for one reason and one reason only. I'm here today to share with you that the same 3 things I'm going to teach you is what has helped to transform my life, my health, helped my wife and I to have a child, because for 10 years we were doing everything possible to have a kid. 10 years. It's very frustrating. I don't know if any of you have ever gone through that, but it's almost to the point where I felt like I was defective. My wife felt like she was defective. We went to all of our doctors, and they both said, everything works. There's we have no understanding. We found out a couple years later that my wife was actually very sick with not an illness that was diagnosable. There was a condition inside of her body that was basically shutting her systems down. She finally then got diagnosed as having Lyme's disease, which we even still wonder if it was actually that. But after going through all sorts of work, I almost retrained myself, went back to school, became a functional medicine doctor, simply so I could help her, because she was my world at the time. She didn't exist. And all of a sudden, when I stumbled across these 3 things that fix diabetes and fix heart disease and fix cancer and fixes everything, we applied them to my wife, and within a couple months, we got pregnant. And Ava came along, and she's an angel just because we don't have blonde hair, nor do we have blue eyes, and somehow she does. And then about a year ago, he came along. And I get so much excitement about speaking today because I know for a fact that he wouldn't be here unless I learned what I learned. She wouldn't be here unless I learned what I learned. My wife and I would probably be divorced or stressed out to the nth degree. And in my clinic, I have seen thousands of transformations in people's lives. Thousands. And I promise you, it's not that complicated. But what you have to do is reprogram your definition of not only what diabetes is, but what health is. And if you do that, I promise you your body can repair itself. It's almost a physical guarantee, just like this hits the ground as long as nothing is in the way. All it is removing the interferences. But yet, when I teach, and I've done this for a long time, I could give the 2 of you a step-by-step guaranteed protocol. Do this for 4 days, do this for 8 days, do this for 10 days, and I guarantee your diabetes is gone. And there's always a risk that could happen when they leave here. They can do what? Not do it, or they could say, those first 4 steps look really hard. I'll just skip to step number 5. Or I don't think I can do that. Or I'd rather start here rather than there. The order gets shifted, whatever. And what they've studied is this. Do you guys know this? 97% of the time when you sit in a seminar like this and you're actually given an answer, you don't act on it. You don't do anything with it. You stand up and you're like, wow, that was a great presentation, wonderful stuff, and you just walk out the door, and by the time you get in your car, guess what happens? There's a text from your family, there's a phone call for this, there's a bill that shows up that's overdue, and all of a sudden, it's out of your brain, gone forever. It's the craziest thing on this planet. what they've learned is that 3% is the person who actually says, right now. Remember how she said, seize the moment. It's your day right now, going, I'm going to take a difference. I'm going to make a stand. I'm going to act on it. When they interview people who have had radical change in their life, what they've discovered is there's always one secret phrase. You ready for the phrase? It's, I remember the day when I made something different. I remember the exact day. Like Debbie said, I remember the day sitting in the third row. Do you hear how specific it was? That one day for her was that 3% moment. And it is truly the difference between success and failure. They've actually determined that you get to decide if what you do leads you to a successful moment or not. Ultimately, your decision, not mine. But because I know that God has each of you here today, I know that you're automatically a 3%er because you had a choice to do something else, and you decided to show up. Does that make sense? So, here we go. What we're going to do is talk about the real cause of diabetes. And to give you a little bit of a hint, that first page on your packet that has like a stool, 3 legs underneath it, that's going to be something I want you guys to reference back and forth. We're going to label the cause on the top, and then we're going to put the 3 foundations of the cause. So for example, if I have a flat tire, it's because of a puncture to the tire, okay? So at the top, as an example, it would say puncture. But then underneath it would be the 3 things that cause punctures. There could be a knife, there could be a screw, there could be a nail, as an example, okay? So when we fill this out, what you're going to see is at the top is the cause. And I'm going to give it to you in a moment. And then underneath it are the 3 things that you must do to fix that cause. Does that make sense? I just want to help you to be grounded on this. Secondly, the stool exists because it's a foundation. If you were to try to put all of your energy into sitting on a one-legged stool, is that hard? It's not very free, is it? It's like constant work. I'm always having to deal with it. And that's what happens, unfortunately, too much in our lives. We put all of our energy into one thing. We go, well, I think if I could just change my diet. If I would remove meat and become a vegan and everything else and never eat another day in my life, maybe I'll fix my diabetes. It doesn't work. Why? It's only one leg. Does that make sense? Now, we do 2 legs. It's a little more stable, but it's still wobbly. Wouldn't you agree? What happens the moment you add a 3rd leg to anything? It's called the tripod effect. What happens? It's stability. So there are 3 core foundations that make the stability for your health. And when you understand what they are, you'll know exactly how to fix them. I also need to let you know about how would you test for those things. Because I'll just ask real quick. Has anybody that's currently taking a medication asked their doctor, why do I have diabetes? I'm imagining you guys probably have. Anybody? Nobody? You guys never asked? What did they say when you asked them?
Because of lifestyle and genetics.
Okay, lifestyle and genetics. Is that what, I mean, I'm assuming because you asked me about a genetic component. Yeah, your pancreas isn't working. But then did you ask the question, why? Right? So most of us we kind of like, well, okay, great. We take it and we move on. But if you really ask the question why, you'll go deep enough to realize that there are going to have to be certain tests to look for the why. Does that make sense? Just like when I need to examine the tire to find the nail, I have to do something to go look for it. So I'm going to review the tests that I suggest you either ask your doctor to run or you let me run for you because I'm going to end up paying for them for you as a special gift that we have. And we need to discuss then why taking medications never fixes it and often only makes it worse. And then at the very, very end, what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you the thing that I've learned that you'll see from some of the testimonials today on how diabetes is now clearing as fast as 90 days. The one thing, 90 days. And the example is sitting in the front seat here today. And you'll see some others. Does that make sense? So this is sort of the flow that I want you to do. I hope you take a ton of notes. I gave you packets because I want you guys to write left and right ferociously. You should write everything down that I put on this board and anything down you see here. We're going to give a special gift where you guys will actually get a little PowerPoint of the slides and everything. So I know everybody takes photos and everything. You can do that if you want, but we're going to give everything to you. Does that make sense? So here's something I'd like to share. Tammy was not able to make it today, but she actually pulled me aside in my office and said, listen, I would like to record a video and share my story with you guys. I met Tammy back in March when I did a seminar on thyroid issues, and she said, well, I don't have a thyroid problem, but I have diabetes, and it sounds like they're the same, so can I come to your office? She came in, and we ran some blood work and found that her A1C is at 7.1. Real quick, does anybody know what A1C should be? 5 or less, ideally, okay? The highest it can get is 5.7, and you're technically okay. But if you are 5 or less, we're good. Does anybody know what A1C stands for? Okay, because they'll never teach you this. Ready? It is the percentage of your blood that has a sugar molecule attached to the red blood cell. Okay? Sugar can attach to certain cells inside of your body. So they have a way to detect the percentage of blood in your body that has sugar attached. Now, to be healthy, you need 5% of your blood or less to have sugar attached to it, meaning 95% of your blood should not have sugar attached to it. Sometimes in diabetics, we see this number as high as 12 or 13 or 14 or 15. What we don't want to see is anything over 5.7. Does that make sense? 5.7. So hers at 7.1 gives me an idea this is wildly uncontrolled diabetes. Does that make sense? Because it's way too high. So then I did this seminar. She came up and said, I'd like to get tested. I'd like to do everything that you guys do. And we retested her in June, 5.4, which means what? Non-diabetic. Who would like to do that? Okay? Real simple. It's real simple. You have to understand that what we're going to do is we're not going to go after your diabetes. When I work with the thyroid, I don't go after the thyroid. The thyroid's not the problem. The problem is the cause. Now, I'm going to give it to you right now so you guys can start to prepare your sheets. The cause is inflammation. So we need to do this. And there are 3 core foundations that create inflammation within our body. Now, as you write, I'm going to give you a moment, but I want you to understand something. When most people think of inflammation, they think like, well, I rolled my ankle, it swelled up, and it hurts a lot, right? Inflammation. Or I've got like sore shoulders, they're inflamed, they're swollen. Would you agree? But that's not the kind of inflammation I'm talking about. What we're discussing is a systemic condition where the cells in your body, the organs and the systems, cells, organs, and systems, are literally swollen. Did you know that your liver can be swollen, inflamed, irritated, and it shows up as liver enzymes being off? Your pancreas could be swollen, inflamed, and irritated, and it shows up that you can't create out enough insulin. Your heart can be swollen, inflamed, and irritated. You guys understand? You can have swelling at the cellular level, an organ level, or a system level. And what we see in diabetes is we see some specific regions that have inflammation, specifically the pancreas and the cells of your body. And so what I want you to understand is all we do is we address the 3 causes of inflammation. When that goes away, diabetes goes away. So just listen, right? This is what Tammy wanted you guys to see. Hey guys, Dr. Ernst. I'm here with Tammy, and she has an incredible story to share with you about the results of addressing the cause of her health issues. Now, we met back in February of this year.
Yes.
You came to one of the seminars just like we're doing today. And what would you say was your kind of deciding moment of why you decided to get tested and get the evaluation done?
Well, I think it was a number of things. I had been going to a regular primary doctor all my life and never saw any changes, and they kept putting me on medication and increasing it to make the sugar level go down. And after listening to you speak, I realized that maybe there was something else that I was missing that they hadn't tested for. So that's what led me here to your office. And we did find some things in probably the first 2.5 months. I followed the protocol that you gave me, and my A1C was at 7.1. It went down to 5.3 just within about 2.5 months.
Yeah, it's fabulous.
Yeah, it was great, and I felt so much better too. I had more energy. Another great thing was my blood pressure medication was cut. I was taking 2 medications, and they took one away and cut the other one in half.
Yeah.
And I was taking metformin, 2,000 milligrams, and now I'm only taking 500, but that's soon to go away too.
That's soon to go away too,
Yes.
yeah. So in all the doctors you had gone to, did they ever test for a leaky gut?
No.
Did they do the neurological tests?
No.
Yeah, and the whole chemical stresses
Right.
and detoxes? So,
Nothing.
So if you were to say something to those people sitting here today, because they're like you, sitting watching us, what would you say to them?
I would tell them that it's worth your time, it's worth your money, it's worth your health. There's nothing that you can do better for yourself than to make sure you're healthy. So do whatever you can.
Yeah, that's great. And listen, today you're going to learn exactly what she did, the tests we run, and how we can get those same results for you. So make sure you pay attention during today's seminar. Okay, now I'm gonna ask you guys a quick question. When you go to a medical doctor and you have diabetes and they give you a medication for your diabetes, does that fix your heart disease as well? Does it make you lose weight as well? So remember I said when we go after the 3 causes, we reduce inflammation. And honestly, if you were to look at it, inflammation causes about 95% of almost all of our health issues. You fix inflammation, you fix everything. It gets your brain back, it gets your energy back, it makes you lose weight. It takes you off the necessity to symptomatically control your life. What you heard me say is, did you ever get tested for a leaky gut? Did you ever get tested for chemical stress? Did you ever get tested neurologically, Neuro, to see if your gut's leaking, there's chemical stressors in the system, and there's neurological interference, because those are the 3 main sources of systemic chronic inflammation. Does that make sense? Now, I'm going to spend today and digest each 3 of them, but what we need to understand is 3 main sources of the inflammation that causes it. So there would be 3 unique tests to do, and I'm going to show you how do you test for this, how do you test for this, and how do you test for this. Make sense? Yes? Neurological. So like, is there a neurological interference? Okay? Is there chemical stress or chemical interference? Is your gut leaking, creating the inflammation? Make sense? Now, out of curiosity, is this a new term for someone? Okay, so new for you, some other people have heard of it. Chemicals and chemical stress testing, looking for things like pesticides, herbicides, heavy metals, etc. Has anybody ever been tested for that kind of stuff? Right? Neurological, how the brain connects to all the different organs in your body. It's possible the pancreas isn't working just because the brain's not connected to it. And what a lot of doctors do is they completely skip over that. It's like a highway that we have to discuss. Now, the issue is if we don't do this, okay, because is there a lot of money in this? Is there a medication to fix your gut? No, no, no. So guess what? There's not $4.7 billion in just insulin alone. Think of the medications, okay? We're getting to the point where most people that have diabetes are taking a medication for it, simply just chasing after their symptoms, believing that it's going to get them better. We're now also getting to the point where almost 10% of the entire United States has diabetes. That's a massive number to think of. Massive number. And I'd like to share with you that there are actually different styles of diabetes. And if you've never heard of this one, it's time to really start paying attention, because just in 2008, they discovered that there's actually a 3rd type. So help me with this, right? Type 1 diabetes is? What's that? Well, I heard a bunch of things. Juvenile, meaning it starts when you are a child. It's also what? Insulin specific, meaning they cannot produce the insulin at all, so they are what are called insulin-dependent diabetics. They require what? Insulin. Now, let me ask you a quick question. What's causing the fact that they don't have any insulin? Now, can this happen to a child? Yes. So if this happens and leads to diabetes in a child, they call it type 1 diabetes. They'll tell you a lie that it's a genetic condition, it can't get fixed, but I've seen type 1 diabetes reverse, just like I've seen type 2 diabetes reverse. If you get to the cause, the body will always heal itself. Only 10% of people typically have this because it's more rare to develop it when you're a child. Type 2 is the classic, right? Now here's how I'm going to crush the entire genetic issue and the family inheritance side of diabetes. If you inherited a gene from mom that was type 2 diabetic, when would you express the genes like we express our genes? When do we turn our genes on and start expressing them? At birth, don't we? So if you had a diabetic genetic tendency, you'd be a type 2 diabetic the moment you took your first breath. Just like cancer is not genetic, nor is heart disease, you develop your conditions because you at some point turn that gene on. Do we all have diabetic genes? Yes. Do we all have cancer genes? Yes. Do we all have heart disease genes? Why didn't he turn on his heart disease gene? Why did his diabetic gene get turned on? Because that's what became inflamed in him. If his heart disease genes became inflamed, he would not develop diabetes, he would develop heart disease. Does that make sense to you guys? Your genes do not create your condition. They only predispose you, and I'm going to show you what you do that turns them on, but more importantly, how do you turn it off? The reason we drop A1C so fast is we do one simple thing that turns the switch off, and the gene just says, I'm done, I give up. And the sugars drop very fast. Type 3, anybody know? What is that? It's called dementia and Alzheimer's. It's when your brain cannot hear your sugar response. If you lose sugars in your brain starts to fall apart and you die. Some people say type 3 diabetes is when a type 2 diabetic now must inject insulin. I would also say yes to that because that means you're heading to this. So if you start off with metformin and glucophage to control your sugars and they don't work and they say now you must inject, that's on your path towards the third phase. Does that make sense? All three of these are reversible. This is more complicated only because it's been there for longer. This usually doesn't show up for most of us till we're 40 or 50 or 60 because that's when the gene got turned on. Does that make sense? That's simple. Medicine says, I've got you covered. And I have every single thing that will make you think you're better, don't they? Every single thing that will make you think you're better, because if you were a diabetic, diagnosed, you went to your doctor, your sugars are too high, and you take this and your sugars go down, don't you think, I'm controlling it. I've got this thing under control. But then when you stop taking them, they start to climb back up. And that's the lie of, well, just stay on this the rest of your life. Did you guys know that the likelihood of you having a health issue is higher when you're taking a diabetic medication than you're not? Because medications do what? Do they make your gut leak more? Yes. Do they cause more chemical stress? Yes. Do they interfere with your nerve tissue? So what do? Now, do you think that they know this? Do you think they know this will make you have more diabetes? You better believe it, because it's big, big business. If I was to stand here and say I have an answer to shut down a $4 billion industry, which I do, by the way, and you do too, we're taking down Goliath, aren't we? We're going right after him. But the neat thing is we're going to throw that little tiny stone, and that beast is going to fall. And it'll fall inside of you too. When you find that little spot, fix that one thing, done. Make sense? Now, here's the often stuff that I have to work through with you guys. Most people think that diabetes is incurable. Type 2, you've got it, and you've got it the rest of your life. The only reason for that is because no one wants to share the cure to you. Again, A, because these medications are recurring prescription, subscription you do. And B, because it requires an immense amount of work in training you. You guys realize your average medical doctor has maybe 5 minutes to sit with you. Do you think, and I'm going to say this with all love, do you think in 5 minutes I can totally change her world, rock her mind, teach her how to eat, show her how to do all this stuff, and have her leave going, what, and feeling empowered, like, man, I can do this? Can they do that? Typically, no. What we need then is the idea that I'm going to just simply share some hope with you that if you just let your body do it by itself, it will always work. Just like if this device is trying to hit the floor, but it's not, and it's stuck, and I'm doing everything. I'm exercising, I'm eating right, I'm changing my diet, I'm doing everything, it's not moving. The only thing I need to do is just remove the interference, and what happens? By itself. You just simply have to remove your interference. Now, I don't know which one of these is yours. And the best thing to do is to get tested to find out which one it is. But in total transparency, are you guys okay if I share this with you? You have a 90% chance you have all three of them. Does that make sense? Now here's where it gets tricky. If I go to Whole Foods and I do a detox, or I go to Clean Juice, love them, but I do a 10-day Clean Juice detox, am I actually pulling chemical stressors out at a cellular level for my body? No. Okay, if I go work out and go to the gym and sweat it off, am I going to change these three systems? Not at all. Which should hopefully give you some sense of freedom and hope that you don't have to go to the gym and sweat your diabetes away, because you can't do that, because it won't work. We have to go after the cause. And if you do that, you're done. Now, if you're taking a medication, I want you to understand, I got this email from someone saying, thanks for the invite. I don't need to come. My sugars are good as long as I take my medications. I'm not coming. And I'm like, it just rattles my world, because he doesn't understand that you're actually setting yourself up for failure, because if I make my numbers look good, but these three things stay here, do you think inflammation turns on with a vengeance as you get older? And it's like a fire, right? It starts as a slow kindle, then it becomes this massive rage. Unless you're turning this off, it's always getting bigger. It's like a rock falling down a hill. The momentum is slow to start, but by the time it's at the bottom, it could knock an entire house over. So this has to get under control. If you don't, it'll start to spread around. Did you guys know that almost all causes of amputations today are because there wasn't enough blood flowing into the fingers or into the toes and you lost life because the sugars are too high? Because let me ask the question. If I add sugar to your blood, it gets thicker, doesn't it? It turns into syrup. And then it's hard for your heart to push the blood, so why does the pressure go up? As a side effect to the fact that the sugars are elevating. So we can actually determine the length and the likelihood of you developing things based upon how long you've had it and how many medications you're taking. And here's the other risk. Did you know that the higher your blood sugars, the faster you age? Do you guys know that? Also, the more insulin in your body, the faster you age. If you want to age fast, all you have to do is get diabetes, and you'll watch photos from year to year look like 10 years. You guys ever wonder why somebody can be 80 and look like they're 40? It's typically because they've massively been controlling their sugars for a long period of time. Now, normal blood sugar would be between 60 and 80 on a fasting side in the morning. And I'm not talking medical normal. I'm talking what you absolutely want to achieve. Okay? If you're between 90 and 100, medically they'll say you're still okay with that. They would say, that's fine. 90 to 100, you're okay. I'm here to tell you the actual real number is 60 to 80. If you're between 100 and 120 in the morning, you should say to yourself, I am about to become a diabetic. And obviously, if you're over 120, there is a high likelihood that you currently have diabetes. Now, could you be 120 and not be a diabetic? Yes, but then that's why we have to look at A1C. Because if I'm 120 and I'm 6.0, what am I? I'm a diabetic. If I'm 120 but I'm 5.4, what am I? Pre-diabetic. Those two numbers are the most important numbers ever, but changing the numbers medically, using medications, doesn't fix the cause because that's not what's causing those numbers to go up. Does that make sense? So what I want you to understand is you cannot diet your way out of diabetes. Even more so if you look at like the what would you call it, the diabetic diet. I went to the American Diabetes website, diabetes.org, and this is what they suggest someone that is diagnosed with diabetes eats to fix it, right off their website. Now, those of you who have come to one of my seminars before are probably saying, what? Because what do you see? Mostly all sugar. Now, I want to ask a real quick question. Did you know that 2 slices of whole grain toast is equal to 1 can of Coke in regards to the amount of sugars that's inside of it? 2 slices of toast. If you look at, say, for example, a bowl of oatmeal that most people with diabetes eat to try to lower their blood pressure, their cholesterol, and everything else, it's the equivalent of 2 Snickers bars in the amount of carbohydrates in it. If you're thinking that you're doing the right thing following this stuff, I promise you this is what supports diabetes because truthfully, they want you to manage it, not get rid of it. Manage it. Because they work with the American Medical Association, who works with your doctors, who then are the prescribers, and that's how the business is run. All of it is to not teach you the real way to get out of it. The challenge is most fruits and vegetables for a diabetic are off limits because fruit has, and one thing that we must reduce is where is the sugar coming from? We must reduce it. Okay, number 2, you have to get off all grains. All grains, and you'll see why in a moment. And truly, you got to get off all dairy because this is what? All still sugar again. So we would only focus on these 2, and the problem becomes this for most of you looks like vegetable oil, corn oil, canola oil, etc. Margarine, right? Because all that's healthy. And then over here, a lot of this is Kobe beef, which is grass-fed and or grain-fed and very dangerous. Fish that is like cheap and on sale because Whole Foods sold their farm-raised fish for $3.99 a pound, and the real stuff is $14 a pound, so I'll save some money. And what we don't realize is we are causing the inflammation through our foods. Diet won't reverse it, but it helps to reduce it. Does that make sense? So here's what we need to understand. If you think taking your medication and changing your diet and exercising is how you fix diabetes, that's what they want you to understand. Medication will never clear it out, and if anything, what we're starting to see is the more medications you take, the more likely you're going to need to take insulin or more in the future. Also, what we now understand is that as your insulin actually rises, which you'll see why that happens in a moment, and by the way, do they check insulin? It's weird, isn't it? Because what you're going to see is your insulin is actually going up, not down. And that would break their entire model if you asked them, why is my insulin going up? I thought insulin pushes sugar in. If they actually tested it, they would have to admit to you, we don't really know what we're doing. Because if your insulin went up, what should happen? If insulin goes up, what should happen? So why are sugars still going up? That's why they don't test for it, because they don't want you to see that they don't know what they're doing. When insulin goes up, it actually blocks the conversion of all your other hormones. So we end up with thyroid issues. We end up with testosterone being too low. We end up with estrogen being all over the place. And we go, well, I'm just getting older. And that's not the answer, I promise you. I look at this and I say, you know what? It's the truth. I hate to say it, absolute truth. Most of the new medications that are prescribed to you are prescribed because someone walked in and said, hey, we have one that's better than the one you're using. Will you please do this because we're going to give you some sort of reward or whatnot? They got busted for doing this a long time ago. Now, instead of giving vacations and trips and everything else, they give them seminars and hotel stays and all these other kind of things for them. So you have to understand that if you want the way out, it's you. I throw this out only because I don't think enough people realize this. Statin drugs, going after cholesterol, is one of the primary issues that creates diabetes in a lot of us. Cholesterol is a much needed healthy fat that will keep your cell membranes from being inflamed. And if I lower my cholesterol by taking a statin drug, I have a higher likelihood of developing it. 91,000 people studied, and they determined that it was a massive increase in your likelihood of developing diabetes. It also makes your insulin levels go up. And as insulin goes up, you age faster, you retain fat, and you actually cause more inflammation. That's how other medications can turn us into a certain new condition. I'm taking a medication for high blood pressure, but I end up with diabetes, and they go, no worries, we have the diabetic medication, which then ends up giving us thyroid problems, and then. See the merry-go-round? So, I'd like to show you what Richard did by doing something simple, going after the gut, cleaning these out, and fixing the spine, which I will then show you how to do. Oops. Hey everybody, I'm here with Richard, and we have one incredible story to tell. Richard's been working on his health since June, had some tests run with his doctor, and why don't you share with them how far has your A1C dropped in just the last couple months?
Since June, it's dropped to 1.1 from 9.2 to 8.
Wow, that's fantastic. And you also said you've lost some weight during that time frame, is that correct?
Yeah, from June it's been 17 pounds, and then from August, 11 pounds.
Yeah, so 17 pounds in just a couple months. And what did your doctor say when they did your most recent check-in?
Well, one thing is to help encourage me to continue losing weight. He offered me a pill to help that along.
Isn't that interesting? Their method is pills, but what we've been doing is we've been detoxing, changing diet, pulling chemical toxins out, and the most important is activating the nerve system. And I think truly, because you've been going to your doctors for quite some time and not getting the results like this in such short periods.
Correct.
So if you were to say to these people that are watching this event today, something about maybe a motivation for them about what we do, what would be your tidbit or your point for them?
Just be patient and do what the doctor says, because everything will work.
Yeah, and the exciting thing is, I don't think A1C really ever changes that fast in such a short period of time. So that is you knocking it out. Being a 3%er, being in charge, congratulations.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, thanks guys. What I thought was funny is when he was at his doctor, they said, well, these results are really good, so we can help you by giving you more drugs. Yet what I was doing with him was helping him to reduce the drugs that he uses, because that's what reduces inflammation. Now, had anybody seen this? This came out about a year or two ago. So Discover magazine said that we could fix aging, we could fix autism, we could fix cancer, we could fix fat burning, we could turn ourselves on to be fat burners if we went after one major thing, inflammation. This is huge to get into mainstream media. This was a quote right out of the article. Inflammation is an underlying, not just because of senescence or the fact that or inflammation, because we age faster. The more inflamed you are, the faster you age. But it's also the leading cause of most chronic diseases like diabetes, atherosclerosis, Alzheimer's, congestive heart failure, premature aging, cancer to the extent. They're now saying this causes almost everything. And the challenge is when you test for this medically, there's no drug to decrease inflammation because anti-inflammatories are for the acute, like my shoulder hurts. It's swollen. I rolled my ankle. They have an anti-inflammatory for localized de-inflammation, but there's no medication that can de-inflame your cell or your organ or your systems. So the way we do this is where you guys need to turn to that page with all those lines. This is what makes my technique so fantastic, gives us such great results, is we go after the source, which is looking at your body from a cellular level. Now, every single cell inside of your body is specifically designed to have this protector or like a shield around it, okay? The membrane of the cell is what keeps the water in the cell outside from the water in your blood. And this membrane right here is made of fat. Now, here's something that I've correlated. This is just my belief, that in the United States, we have taken fat out of almost all of our diet since the 1960s. And if you were to graph out incidence of diabetes, heart disease, cancer, pancreatic issues, cancer, you name it, you'll see that it's almost like right there at 1960, everything started this exponential incline. It was like we started taking off with these diseases at that point. The reason for that is this fat is so delicate that if you damage the fat, you do two things. You cause the exchange of nutrients not to take place, so you could starve the cell out. And inside here, again, we have our DNA, which are all of our genes, and we have this little tiny guy that I'm going to blow up called your mitochondria. It is the energy producer. All you need to know is this thing makes energy. So those of you who are like, man, I'm tired all the time, I'm fatigued, I can't seem to do anything, I'm not losing weight, the reason for that is this is not getting turned on. Now, when we do these things that I'm going to teach you that cause inflammation, we start to irritate this membrane and we make it sort of, I'll call it closed. The membrane should have channels that allow for things to flow in and flow out. But as this becomes inflamed, again, because of those three things, having a leaky gut, having too many chemicals, and not having the correct neurological supply, brain to cell, what happens is this starts to get clogged. Now, just help me with this. If I cannot get nutrients like the food I eat, oxygen, water, etc., into the cell, then inside of here, it would basically starve. And when a cell starves, it has two options. This is going to rock your world. It can become a diseased, adapted cell, or it can just die. Now, what do you think your body would prefer? Would it prefer that the cell dies, or would it prefer that it turns into a diseased cell that is different, can still perform its functions to some degree, and still be present, or would it rather just kill the cell off? What do you think? You would think it would want to do that, wouldn't you? But if there's so much inflammation and you kill off all your cells, what happens? You die. So your body does one thing and one thing really well. It's trying to keep you alive. So what it will do is it will turn it into a diseased cell that has adapted to the inability to do this. And that's why we start to get various conditions. If this is a lot of pancreas cells doing this, you'll end up with pancreatic issues. Could be cancer, could be diabetes, could be whatever. Does that make sense? Now, because the membrane is made of fat, one of the most important things that we need to do is recognize if I want to fix this, I must eat the types of fats that are inside of this cell. Does that make sense? Because what I eat helps me to rebuild this. Now, I can promise you with a shadow of a doubt that that is not made of the types of fats you're consuming. It is made primarily of cholesterol and saturated fat. They are specific little tiny fat molecules that hold themselves together. So if you're cutting out certain fats like saturated fats, you're cutting cholesterol from your diet, you are going to damage these. Does that make sense? Now, you might say to yourself, well, I don't cut that stuff out. But chances are, if you eat any sort of food product that's processed today, served in a restaurant, even stuff you're buying, they have been changed to where they're taking the saturated fats away. And they're reducing cholesterol in food because we think cholesterol causes heart attacks, and it actually does not. The lack of cholesterol causes heart attacks because the lack of cholesterol causes this cell to become inflamed and damaged, which causes you to turn on your heart disease genes, and then we get heart attacks. Does that make sense? Now, the other thing that happens is on this membrane is a receptor for all of your hormones. Think of it like an antenna. If you have, say, for example, insulin, insulin has to land on this receptor in order for sugar to go into the cell. So if it is swollen and inflamed, what happens is often the receptor is inside the inflammation. So insulin is here, and it says, well, I don't see it. Does that make sense? So what happens is we never get it to land on it, so therefore nothing occurs. And then secondly, because the membrane is inflamed, even any small amount that gets inside of there, any of the sugar that does get in goes to the mitochondria, makes energy, but also in that process gives off various toxins that must come out. Now, if the cell is inflamed and the toxins don't come out, what happens? This is life-changing. What happens? The toxin stays inside of here, and they turn the genes on. Wild. The toxins will irritate the genes and turn on your bad genes, because the more toxins you have, the more you damage your DNA. And all of this is happening because there's too much inflammation on the cell. And what causes this are those three things: leaky gut, too many toxins, and having a nerve that is not connected. Because if the brain doesn't know that this is happening, the brain wouldn't kill the cell and regenerate it fast enough. Does that make sense? If your brain is like, I didn't even know this is going on, it'll keep happening, the cell will say, in order to live, I must become a diseased cell. That's the secret right there. What we do is we measure the amount of inflammation. Did you guys know you can actually do a test to find out how bad this is? Who's done that before, out of curiosity? Okay, all of you who are patients, yes, right? Secondly, we can actually detect the amount of toxins inside the cell, not the toxins that are just on your body because of your beauty products, etc. We can run tests to determine how high that is inside of you. And when you do this, you actually turn this guy back on again. And if I am now a pancreatic cell that's trying to produce insulin, trying to make it, then guess what it'll start to do? It'll start to make insulin. If I'm a cell that's trying to receive insulin and we fix this, then the mitochondria create energy, and because there's no inflammation, the toxins are naturally excreted. Naturally. Your body is designed to detox by itself, but some of you are just simply stuck because there's too much inflammation there. This is a blood test that we can run that can determine the amount of inflammation. Firstly, we check sugars just to see where we're at. Secondly, we look at hemoglobin A1C to find out what percentage of your blood is there. Thirdly, we look at what's called C-reactive protein. If I want to measure this, I run a test called CRP, because this stuff gives off these protein molecules that we can find out how much of it is in your blood. Secondly, I can run something called homocysteine, which is another marker that will tell me how much of this is present. So the higher the homocysteine, the more it's there. Now, what you should have is how much inflammation in your body. Close to nothing. So if my C-reactive protein is 3.3, that's over the medical threshold, and guess what the solution to lower that is medically? We will wait and see. No, there's no drug for it. They'll go like this. Well, you really should focus on the other things. Let's keep this going, and in 90 days we'll retest you, and we'll pray that that's come down because there's no drug for it. Secondly, there's nothing drug-wise that lowers homocysteine. Nothing. Most people have never had this tested. Even though it's 8.4, it'll say normal medically. But to me, 8.4 is 50% inflammation. 50% inflammation within the body. Would that be allowable for you? Not for me. And then lastly, the reason I look for vitamin D is because it is intimately connected to your immune strength. If your vitamin D is low, you can't activate your immune system. So if I want to repair this cell, I can't because I don't have it. Does that make sense? Simple blood test. Very simple, could show me, do you have this? How much is there? And then what do we need to do to go after it? Secondly, we can run an even more specific test that's relatively new, that you can actually take your urine, drip it into this vial. You could do this by yourself. Drip it into this vial, and it measures this fancy molecule that tells us how much inflammation is in your body. We can score you on you have no inflammation or you have an excessive amount of inflammation. This test has been measured against blood markers. It's been shown to be 50 times more accurate than the blood test itself. I called LabCorp this week to ask them, hey, if I sent a patient to you and I had you measure this in their urine, all I want is that. It would be the same thing, wouldn't it? Hey, LabCorp, tell me how much of this is here. You're doing it right here with this vial. $550 for one urinary test. $550. I have these guys in my office, and if you decide to come in and get tested, we go like this. Hey, can you do this for me? And then just real quick, when it changes color, take a picture and send it to us. That easy. Who would like to be able to do that? Just like that. Inflammatory markers on the go at your house. Brand new, just came out, yet it's $500 if you go to LabCorp and have it be done. I'm telling you, we are getting to the part where we actually know how to fix this, and the easy thing is you can do it. You don't have to go to your doctor. You don't have to go to a lab. We just get it done. Now, if we're going to look at things like diabetes coming from inflammation, what I want you to understand is the gut is intimately connected to the source of our inflammation. So if I go back to this, what we're looking at is the idea that how you treat your intestines is the first and most important thing that we need to start with. Okay, does that make sense? So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to take you guys through, if you were to come into my office and you were to say, hey, listen, I want to do this, and I test positive for this, so how do I get this fixed? That's what we're going through right now. What are we looking at? How do we test it? And what do we do to correct it? What a leaky gut is when the membranes of your intestines have split apart because A, they're inflamed, and B, they are getting damaged. Now, inside your intestines, you have cells that are designed to be very tightly knit, and they have these little tiny guys called junction points that hold the cells together. Think of them like if I had a string of people, we were all holding our arms like this, we would all be tight together. Does that make sense? Secondly, what they do is they protect the barrier. So in here, inside the intestines, you would have things like stool, viruses, bacteria, and then on the outer side, we have our blood. So when you eat stuff and then get stuff inside of you, it has to travel through the cell to get into your blood. Now, when you have a leaky gut, what has happened is the tight connections between them have split apart, and you start to leak nutrients that you normally wouldn't have present in your blood into your blood. So if you get stool, which by the way happens all the time, into your blood, that causes inflammation. When you get viruses and toxins and bacteria that are always in our stool, in our blood, you cause inflammation. The unique thing is we now know that there's one specific thing that creates this, that cuts these things in half, and it is the gluten protein from wheat. Not so much the sugar, but the protein itself. They did a study once, and they found out that regardless of if you're celiacs or not, if you eat gluten, the gluten lands on the cell, activates an enzyme that goes in and cuts it apart, and therefore we create the leak. So do you see why it's absolute insanity that the Diabetic Association says load up on whole grains? Because they know it causes this, and they know it makes more inflammation, and they know that all you know is to cover up your symptoms. Now, let me ask you a question. Is it hard to give up wheat, grains, breads, pastas, rice, all that kind of stuff? Yes? It's difficult, isn't it? When I did it the first time, I was like having wheat shakes. You guys know what those are? Like it calls our name. Did you know that they've proven that the gluten molecule, when it lands on a brain cell, it's landing on a gut cell causing damage. When it lands on your brain cell, it goes like this. Woo! Just like cocaine and just like sugar. They did a study where they gave someone cocaine, right? They gave them cocaine, and they measured their brain, and they saw all this light-up activity inside the head. And then they gave them an injection of sugar, all the light-up activity in the brain. Then they said, eat these 2 pieces of toast, all the light-up of the activity inside the brain. The reason why it's so hard to get off of wheat is because you're actually truly addicted to it because of that molecule. Now, I'm going to ask you a question. Why all of a sudden has that molecule started doing that? How come biblically they could eat bread and grains and stuff and not have that challenge? Does anybody know? So part of it is, one, we spray lots of chemicals, right, onto the wheat. So if that's wheat, we're spraying it. Number 2 is we've genetically modified it to put more sugar into it because we want to make it taste better. And then also we've hybridized them to make more yield. Now I'm going to throw this out. You can Google this. There's something called amylopectin A. Amylopectin A. When you eat wheat of today, so if you go to Whole Foods and you buy a whole grain loaf of bread, organic even, non-sprayed, non-genetically modified, it has more amylopectin A in it than ever before because even the organic grains are still coming from a source that was created in 1960. We took the original wheat and we split it into 14 different categories to shorten the stalk and make more of it so we could have a higher yield. So even the wheat today, if grown organically, has more amylopectin A in it. They've done a study that if you give yourself, say, 1 gram of amylopectin A and 1 gram of sugar, 100 times higher spike in blood sugar than 100 grams of sugar. 100 times stronger response on sugar for your body's system, and it all comes from the wheat that we eat. So if I eat wheat, I'm damaging my gut, and I'm spiking my sugars. So what's the first thing that any diabetic must do? You have to stop all grains, all of them, corn, wheat, soy, and oats. But when I say that, everybody does this. Why do we do that? Because we're addicted to them. Can we all just admit to it? Okay? But now watch. How long does it take for diabetes to go away? I've seen it happen as fast as 90 days. Are you the type of person where you're telling me you can't stop eating wheat for 90 days? If that's true, I get that. But it's not going to work for you. But if you're like, hey man, it's only 90 days, let's go after it, I promise you it works. I promise you. Stress and different drugs and other things also tend to spread this thing apart. But the most important thing that I want you to understand is grains cause the inflammation in the intestines, and that leads to inflammation within your body. Grains. Got it? Grains. When you have a leaky gut, they have connected it to spreading inflammation throughout your whole body that eventually you get thyroid issues, you start to have colon problems, your adrenals start to fail, your kidneys start to fail, your joints ache. One way you know if you have a leaky gut is if you wake up in the morning and you're like, man, my back and my hips and my legs are killing me, but by about noon, you're like, hey, I feel like $1,000,000. That's a leaky gut. Guaranteed leaky gut inside of your body. Because what happens is it creates swelling in the joints, and as you move, you push the swelling around to other areas. Okay? Secondly, we now know that the amount of chemicals that are in your body activate the inflammation, and the reason for that is that what chemicals do, rather if they are produced in the cells or if you are consuming them, is that chemicals and toxins are attracted to fat. Now watch, what part of the cell is made of fat? The outside. So any chemical or any toxin in your body is intimately attracted innately to this. So the more toxic you are, the more fat you tend to have on you, because your body will actually make more fat to try to hold them. So that as your toxins rise, your fat will rise to try to offset this. So if you're somebody who's going like, well, I just can't seem to lose weight, I'm stuck, I'm struggling, it's because there's too many toxins in your body. So your body's actually trying to protect you by saying, well, let's load up on fat. Where does the majority of the fat go for most of us? Here, 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 etc. Notice how it's always going around your intestines. Where do you think the majority of the toxins are coming from? Leaking through the intestines. Why do you think your body says, I need to throw a ton of fat around that gut to try to close it up, heal it, and say, let me hold all this for you? But because you don't realize that the toxins are coming from the foods you eat and the products you use, it just keeps building and building and building. When they leak across and they start to now get beyond the gut, they will land inside. Toxins start to land here, and they spike the inflammation, which blocks the receptors. The reason most diabetics have such a hard time lowering their sugars is because the insulin is there, but it can't land on the receptor, so the receptor goes, I don't have anything to do. I can't pull the sugar in. And what happens when the sugar stays for a long period of time in your blood and it can't get into the cell? It has to go somewhere, so what does the body do with it? Turns it into fat. And it's doing it to say, I will try to protect you then. If I can't get, this is the innate, think about it, it's so brilliant. The innate wisdom of your body saying, if there's a ton of sugar in your blood, it's because the receptors are damaged, because there's too much fat, too many toxins. So what I'll do is I'll try to help you. I'll help you by making more fat so you can decrease your toxic load. I'll help you by making you fatter. It's weird, isn't it? And then we go to the gym and we try to suck it off and sweat it out and do everything else, and we make it worse by doing that. Now, inflammation of the membrane is now being called TIIR. Write this down. You should go Google this. I guarantee you, your medical doctor, your naturopathic doctor, your holistic physician is not telling you about TIIR. Toxin-induced insulin resistance. Toxin-induced insulin resistance. What it means is this. There are now known various toxins. I'm going to blow that cell up. Okay, everybody okay with this? If I'm looking way inside of this, here's the fat membrane made of fat. If it's healthy, I would see a receptor. Now, this it works for everything. It could be insulin, which would be diabetes, correct? It could be thyroid hormone, and it would be thyroid. It could be testosterone, and it would be et cetera, et cetera. Make sense? Usually that's decreased libido, inability to create an erection for a man, low sex drive, everything else. It could be estrogen, which would be early menopause, night sweats, everything else. You guys understand? If the receptor is available and these things can land on it, the cell does exactly what it's supposed to do. Now, what they have determined is various toxins in our environment can do one of two things. The toxin will sit inside the receptor and block it. So you could have no inflammation, perfectly perfect, healthy first leg, no leaky gut. But if you have something blocking the receptor, same thing. Does that make sense? The toxins tend to get inside the receptor, and they hardly ever let go. So then what your body does is it goes, well, I need to destroy this receptor, and I'll make a new one. Now guess what happens if you don't reduce these? The toxin lands here. And then the cell goes, fine, I'll destroy this one, and I'll make a new one, because it's healthy, right? So then, again, the toxin lands, and you know what happens? Eventually, your body's like, all right, fine, I'm not going to make them anymore. So you start to become resistant because there are no receptors. They actually reduce the numbers, so therefore, you have a lot of insulin, you have high blood sugar, you're called a diabetic, but what's the cause? Toxins blocking the membrane. This is leg number 2. You guys remember? First cause could be a gut that's leaking, causing inflammation. Second cause could be toxins landing on the receptors, and over time, we start to get damage. Now, they have linked approximately 33% chance that your diabetes is because of this. That's a 1 in 3 chance. That's huge. 1 in 3 chance that this is the cause, not your diet, not your genetics, okay? Secondly, they're now understanding that one of the primary causes is the heavy metal mercury that is found inside your tooth if you have a filling. Now, I'm going to show you something that is going to rock your world. This comes from a functional dentist that I work with. Do you guys know what a functional dentist is? Does anybody know what a functional dentist is? How about the word biological dentist? Anybody heard of that? Okay? Oh, God. We got a lot of teaching to do then. Okay? You have heard of a dentist before, hopefully? Okay. I'm a standard dentist. I'm a traditional dentist. They'll say this. You have a cavity because you're eating too much sugar and there's too much acid in your mouth. There's a hole in your tooth. That's a symptom, by the way. The hole in the tooth is a symptom. The bacteria is a symptom, not a cause. They'll say, we need to go in, drill that, and fill it. Now, when you used to fill fillings, like for most of us, right, we would go and we'd drill a hole in the tooth and we'd put a mercury filling inside. It's called an amalgam. Everybody familiar with this? Does anybody have silver fillings? Okay. I mean, look, okay, most of us do, okay? When you put an amalgam filling in a tooth, what you're doing is you're adding a metal that is a known toxin. Do you guys know that mercury today, if you were to have, they banned them, outlawed. You can't have a thermometer that has mercury anymore because if I broke it open and it spilled on the floor, it could literally poison you to the point where you would die. So OSHA would have to come in. They'd have to run vacuums. They would evacuate everyone from the building. 1 drop of mercury, yet it's totally fine and safe to put inside your tooth. Standard dentists in years and years and years would say, I have no problem jamming this mercury inside of your tooth. Now, I want to just ask you guys a question. Everybody look up at me. Which teeth typically get filled? But which ones specifically? The back 2, don't they? Yeah. And is it more upper or more lower usually? It's usually more upper. Really? Upper more than lower. You have a 99% chance that if you have a filling, it is guaranteed either in that first or second molar. And now, a biological dentist will say this. Well, the reason you had a filling in the first place is because the tooth is sick. The tooth that has cells is sick. The tooth has become decayed because you didn't work on your inflammation and everything else. Secondly, each tooth has a nerve root inside of it, doesn't it? Now, this is going to blow your mind. Every tooth nerve root is connected to an organ inside of your body. Every single one of them. They don't just go to the brain, they go to the organs. Why did God put nerves inside of our teeth? Ready for this? So that when you chew food, it's going to blow your mind. When you chew food, you tag the organ that gets the food. So as you chew, your pancreas is like, vitamin C, I need that. Vitamin C, I need that. So if you chew food on your back molar, they go to your breast tissue, your thyroid, your stomach, and your pancreas. If you chew food on these, it goes to large intestines, lung, eyes, the rectum, the anus, etc., blah, 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 blah. Now watch. Most people have fillings in these 2 teeth, so that would lead to toxicities in those areas. Is breast cancer on the rise like crazy, for women especially? Thyroid conditions becoming a bigger issue. What about digestive problems, acid reflux, etc.? What about diabetes? If you have a filling in either of these 2 teeth, instead of sending the signal for, I'll call it vitamin C, healthy fats, you're saying send all that mercury straight to that organ, straight to the organ. They did a study with sheep, lamb. lamb. They would take one of their teeth, drill it, fill it with an amalgam filling, and they started doing ultrasounds and x-rays and stuff of the organs, and this is how they mapped all this out. Then they did it with people going, well, let's just do a survey and find out if you have a health condition, do you have a tooth here? 98% connection between that health issue and a filling that tooth because it sends it to the organ. A biological dentist will teach you this stuff. A regular dentist will say, you just need a filling. It's insane. Absolutely insane. The other thing that they've connected to causing issues within the receptors are things, again, like BPA, which we're now starting to pull out of a lot of products, a lot of containers and things, but guess what? The majority of them still have it. Pesticides that we spray, the heavy metals in our teeth, and the chemicals that are in things like tobacco and pipes and stuff like that. That stuff is what creates irritation here. Now, secondly, where does a toxin come from that we're not putting on us? It comes from those toxins that develop on the inside when we have inflammation. So the problem becomes, as we lose our receptors, the membrane starts to inflame itself because it says, listen, I can't seem to produce the right receptors. I must be damaged. I'm going to inflame myself so that the brain will get rid of me so that I can come back and be healthy. That's what the body does. So as it gets inflamed, the toxins start to build up on the inside because it's like an exhaust pipe that's been blocked. It just builds up. As the toxins build up on the inside, now it starts to affect the DNA again, and what do? We turn on the gene. Remember I said to you, I have a technique that will actually turn off the genes in your body for disease? The technique is doing what? Getting the toxins out of the cell. Now, there's a huge difference between doing a colon cleanse and a juice fast and getting toxins out of a cell. Would you agree? In order to get the toxins out of the cell, we have to first fix the inflammation that's already present. So we must decrease the inflammation. How do we do that? That's one, because that would fix what? That would fix the gut. So one, we have to get the gut to stop leaking. Two, we have to pull the toxins out. Three, we have to make sure the nerve is connected, because what will happen is then when we do these three, your brain will say, okay, I see that it's damaged. I'm going to replace it with a new one, and then you're repaired. It's that simple. Replace it with a new one, and then you're repaired. Once we do those three things, the body will repair itself, and all the toxins come out. Now, if you are loaded, because some of you have tons and tons and tons of these guys, and you start to dump toxins directly into your bowels, obviously I'm not a very good artist, toilet, okay? If you dump toxins into your bowels, you guys tell me, if I don't support you and I load your gut with toxins, you will start to say what to me? I'm dumping toxins into your gut. I've opened up all your cells, all these toxins dump into your gut. You're going to go, oh, this is the worst thing ever. I have massive headaches. I'm breaking out in rashes left and right. I'm going to stop. I'm going to let all this stuff build back up again. And will you feel better? Yes, because where do the toxins go? They go right back into the cell, and then what do you still have? Inflammation. So if you don't support your intestines and help them to pull the stuff out, then you're going to spiral back. It's basically a self-fulfilling prophecy. If you dump toxins and you can't get rid of them, you reabsorb them, and then they go right back and cause the problem. What makes our technique so specific is not only can we get in and get them out, but then we can support your systems and help you with certain chelation products to just simply and safely eliminate them. It's the most fantastic thing I've ever seen in my life. If you have here, though, a filling, I'm going to ask you a question. Will you be able to 100% reverse your diabetes if there's a leak of the mercury to the pancreas and that filling remains? Because what am I doing? I'm leaving that third leg to a small degree. I could fix my gut, I could fix my nerve system, but if I still have that filling in there, it's going to be a constant leak. Why do you think I work specifically with biological dentists? Because if you have it and it's causing your problem, it may be the thing that you need to get out. Now, as soon as I say that, what's the first thought going through your head? Curious. Why though? Well, not necessarily pulled. It just has to be replaced. I got to get the filling out, and I have to put a ceramic one in. But when I say that, what do you think? How much money is it going to cost? That is exactly what a 97%er does. Exactly. A 97%er will say, that's a lot of work. I don't have enough money for that. Does my insurance cover that? Will my dental insurance do that? Will my local dentist do that for me? So again, remember, you have the decision to make. You get to decide if you want to do exactly what works. I know this works. I'll give it right to you. But the question is, will you do it? We can actually detect how many toxins are in your body by looking at one simple thing, a measurement of what's known as a composition scan to determine how much fat you actually have. Now, I'm curious, how many of you that I've never met with before could actually tell me right now that you've had a test to say down to the 0.gram or 0.pound amount how much fat you actually have on side of you? Anybody? Like, you know the exact amount. Who did that for you out of curiosity? Like,
I just found out that I have.
so, and we'll talk about that in a moment, okay? She shared it with me secretly. I won't share it with the rest, okay? But we're now starting to recognize the most important thing you can know is out of your total weight, how much of you is fat. Most important thing. It requires a very special scale that you have to stand onto that runs a current through your body and calculates the exact amount of fat. The reason I want to do that is what? If you have a lot of fat on your body, you have a lot of... Now, also, I want to know where the fat is. Because if I have the majority of my fat in my trunk, then now I know I have a leaky gut. And I know I'm chemically toxic. When you talk about percents, I want to know the total number and what percent is in there. Not just the percentage of your trunk, but 38 times 2 is... That's basically 50%. Wouldn't you agree? So if this person comes into my office, I run this simple test, and I know instantly that there's a leaky gut and there's chemical toxins. Not only that, but I know that the BMI is high, the body fat is high, and those are the #1 indicators for diabetes. And I also know severe dehydration, which is a cause also for inflammation. So what I'm doing is I'm testing for cause. And now looking at this, I would say we need to start fixing a leaky gut. Your job is to stop eating grains. My job is to help you support the system so that it will repair itself. Does that make sense? That easy. That simple. This is Pam. She's actually here today. And I want you guys to hear what we did with her was we started going after those two things. And I mean, this is literally like we need to publish this as like a case study, just so you guys can hear this. Okay? Look at Satan trying to prevent me from playing this. Hey guys, I'm so excited. I have Pam here, and we have something incredible to share with you about what's been happening with her sugars. So I'm going to let you share the story more just because it's so transformational. So.
Okay, well, I was diagnosed by my regular primary care physician of having diabetes type 2. My sugar at that time was 396, and my A1C was 12.7 according to his test. And I came to see Dr. Ernst because my doctor told me there was no hope. He immediately wanted to put me on metformin. I called them and said, can I just not take the medication, do something else? They said it was impossible. You have to take metformin. I said, can I do it with diet and exercise? Anything else? There's nothing else you can do. You have to take the metformin. And so I didn't feel that that was where God was wanting me to go. So I met Dr. Ernst on April the 19th. He ran his own blood test and showed that my blood work was 9.1. When I emailed him, I felt like I had no hope. And he reached out to me and he gave me hope. And I came to him and he shared with me how I could heal my gut, heal my back, and eat healthy and straighten everything out. And my success story is as of today, I got my blood work back and my A1C is 5.7.
Yeah.
I give God all the glory. I pray blessings upon Dr. Ernst's ministry because this is a ministry. I'm not just a person or a number. I am a sister in Christ to him, and he cares about my whole health.
And so let me ask this. When you were at your medical office, did they ever test your gut to see if there was a bacterial relationship to what was going on with your sugars? Did they run like a detox test to find out if you had toxins or any issues? Did they take x-rays of your spine looking at the nerves that go to your pancreas or to the areas of your intestines?
Blood test only.
Yeah, and so the challenge is, of course, in their world, there is no cure because they don't test for the cause. When you actually get cause tests done and you fix that, of course, the human body has the ability to heal itself. So what a great, great story. What would you say for those who are watching this video about if they have diabetes, or even if they don't even know that they have diabetes, what would you say to somebody who's looking for a way out?
I would come to Dr. Ernst. He runs a full panel, gets all the answers instead of just a small view. He gets the whole panel done so you know exactly where you're at. And then he gives you a plan fit specifically for you to get you to move forward to meet your goal of where you need to be wholly healthy.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Thanks so much for sharing.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks,
God
guys.
bless.
When did we record that? Yesterday. Yesterday. I know. Most fantastic thing ever. And for me, guys, the #1 thing that made this happen for her is her just doing it. It wasn't even me. Like, I can point her in the direction, but I mean, you've been logging that stuff every single day, doing everything, and I'm telling you, you can be that way if you simply figure out which one it is. Now, did you hear how I said, did anybody check her nerve system? And I've hinted to the fact that there's this brain-nerve connection, but it's real simple. There is one nerve in your body called the vagus nerve. Has anybody heard of this? Okay. The vagus nerve has been shown to primarily send an electrical signal to the pancreas to make it produce insulin. So when I see someone who says my insulin is lower than normal, I instantly jump straight to you also have a neurological involvement. When I see someone who says my sugars are climbing like crazy and now the doctor wants me to inject insulin, I think vagal nerve interference. Because tell me if it would make sense. If I take a knife and I cut the vagus nerve in half, what does the brain do to the pancreas? It shuts it down. Why? Because it doesn't even know it's there anymore. And remember, the job of your body is to keep your cells alive. If the nerve is damaged, then it doesn't even know this is here. And if the nerve is full of toxins because it's coming from your teeth, then it's sending the toxins to the joint or to the actual tissue. They've discovered that the vagus nerve comes out of this specific spot within your neck. So if you were to push on the back of your skull and come down, you'll find this real soft spot. Usually it's quite tender for most, right behind the back of your neck. And if we're going to do a vagal nerve test to find out if that's what's causing your diabetes or is a part of your inflammatory response, what we have to do is have you sit, look straight, and take an x-ray through your neck. Now, yes, I am a chiropractor, and I'm not doing this to find out if you have neck pain. I'm doing this to find out if the vagal nerve is compressed if you have diabetes. If you have thyroid issues, I'm finding out if the thyroid nerve is compressed. If you have heart issues, I'm finding out if the heart nerve is compressed. Because today is a diabetic talk, we're going to talk about the diabetic nerve. Does that make sense? The diabetic nerve exits right there. Now, if that nerve is healthy and open and has 100% communication, from the side you would see the skull and that first bone are split apart, very close to being parallel. Now, what I do is I basically stick a little measuring tool here on a computer, and it tells me the angle, and I know it should be 18. Does that make sense? Can you guys see that's wide open, isn't it? Wide open, okay? What we want is for there to be space right there, because I know then the vagus nerve is coming out. Now, if, as an example, a patient of mine who I'm working with that I met back in May, who is a raging diabetic, and I say raging as in, like they said, you're probably going to lose your vision, lose your eyes, and have to get your toes amputated if you don't fix this like tomorrow. He was listening to my radio show that I did on diabetes, called in and said, I don't even want to wait for your seminar in September. I need to come in now. They told me now, right? So now you guys know when the diagnosis comes and they say you've got to do something, this is when we're like, hey, there's no more 97% thoughts. It's just, I got to become a 3%er. Tell me, what do you see with his, out of curiosity? Massive, massive pinch, yes? Now, I asked him, hey, how much does your neck hurt? You know what he said? I have no neck pain, none. And the reason for that is the vagus nerve is not responsible for transferring pain signals. You could compress your vagus nerve 100% and you won't feel anything here, but what would you feel? Massive fall apart because your sugars will go through the roof because your pancreas shut down and you won't be able to control your sugars. And then that leads to high blood pressure, and then that leads to high cholesterol, and then that leads to everything else, your thyroid shutting down. You'll say, I'm really sick, but because you don't feel it, we just assume it's not there. Secondly, the vagus nerve from the front, so this is the first bone, exits right in between the little grooves here. So it comes down from the brain, exits out, and then goes out. So when I'm looking at this, I'm looking at it from the side. See this bone right here? Okay, so there's the vagus nerve coming out. Now, where does it come out if I'm looking at it from the front? It comes from the brain and out that little groove, and boom, out it goes. And then out it goes. Now, you guys tell me, what would be the problem with that?
One side's narrow, the other side's huge.
Yeah. So which side is compressed? Your left, right? Depending upon their positioning, it could be their right. That's a moot point. Would you agree, though? There it is. Now, I'm going to ask you guys, are you trained in how to read x-rays? No. Can you see vagal nerve compression? Yes. Has anybody been taught? Has anybody had an x-ray of how to do this? Why won't most chiropractors do this? Because they're not trained in this. No, what do most people go to a chiropractor for? My neck hurts. I don't do that kind of chiropractic. I do structural chiropractic based upon, do you have an issue in your spine with what your health issue is? If you have diabetes and you have this, you could clean out your gut, get rid of all the wheat, do all this stuff, do all the detoxing, and what would happen? It won't get better because this is still there. Do you see how some of you, it could be all three? Now the challenge becomes, some of you are going like, okay, enough already. Like I've already got it. I got to fix this, fix this. Just get to the point. What do you got to do, okay? I would highly suggest that you have these films taken, these x-rays, so that I can see what this looks like. And I'd love to do it for you if you want to get better. I would love to say, stand on the scale, get the testing done, run the blood work, run that meta-oxy test. But I know what's going inside of your brain is usually the same as everybody else, isn't it? How much does all that cost? Okay? If you were to just look at the test alone, remember I said the meta-oxy through LabCorp is $500? The blood work is about $800 to $1,000. How much does it cost to go get x-rays done of your neck? Anybody know? Like just go to the emergency room, go to the ER, go to your chiropractor, go to your doctor, say, hey, just series on my neck. Let's do it. Depending upon your coverages, it could be your copay, $35, or it could be you have to pay for the whole thing, $100, $150. So if you're somebody here today and you're going, I would like to get this tested, my gift to you is this. The blood test alone costs me $497 to run. If I send you to the lab, they're going to send me a bill that says $497. If I send you to the lab through your doctor, you're going to get a bill anywhere between $800 to $1,000. So I can get you a discount on it, but it costs me $497. What I ask that you do is you cover the cost of the blood test, and then I will include the meta-oxy test. I will include the x-rays test. I will include a sit-down to show you everything that we found. And then, if you need to have something reset, we'll do the adjustment. We'll retest you. If we need to do a dietary test, like, hey, for the next 6 days, get rid of this and let's see what happens, I'll tell you exactly what you need to do, and then we see how your body responds. Third visit, you come back, and we sit down and we review all of your changes, and then based upon how things improved, I get to say, here's my recommendation for you. Here's what I would suggest. On the average, you guys probably looked through your pamphlets. It's about $897 if you were to come to my office and pay for all three of those, even with me discounting your tests. My pledge to you, if you're somebody going, yes, let's do it, let's make it happen, is I reduce it to the cost of $497, which is only the cost of the blood test, and then we're including everything else as my gift to you. Does that make sense? The only thing, though, is it's for those people who are ready to take an action. I did come here specifically looking for someone to be the next greatest testimonial. I did come here looking for someone who's going, I'm sick of being on that merry-go-round and I want to get out. And I do realize that not all of you are going to do it. And I'm fine with that. But I do know that God put someone here today that's ready to make a transformation in their health, and you can do it. I promise you, you can do it. You just simply need to find out if you have it. When your brain is disconnected from the organs, it doesn't receive the signal. The analogy I use is equal to that of a fuse box in your garage. Think about it. If I throw the switch to the off position, wherever that goes, what's happening? It's not working. So if you have irritation or problems with nerve signaling, you may not feel it as like, oh, there it is, there it is, there it is. But your body feels it in the regard to the fact that there's inflammation in those systems. It's as simple as taking that switch and turning it on if that's your deficiency. It's as simple as repairing the leaky gut if you have it, but we have to find out how bad it is leaking so we can determine how to fix it. It's as simple as getting the toxins out, reducing the inflammation, and letting your body go in and repair itself. And that's the beauty of it. Your body was predestined and designed by God to know if I don't have these three, I can then fix that. That's how diabetes cleared out in 90 days. That's how A1C dropped a full point in just a couple weeks, because you two said, I'm doing this. And my curious question, for those of you who have a red folder like this, can I see this for a moment? Is basically, if you have this, it's because I've never had the opportunity to check it and to test it. And all I'm asking is do you want to be that type of person to say, in 90 days, gone, or in 7 months, whatever it takes. Even if it took 6 months, it's still a short period of time. So if you would, for me, as a favor, if you're here today going, absolutely, that's what I want to do, I'll give this back to you in a second, is you'll find a little piece of paper on the inside that looks like this. Can you guys at least make sure that they're in there? This little half sheet, it'll say, schedule your 5 Essentials examination. Have name, your date of birth, your contact number, your email address. Over here in this gray box, you'll see Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday, etc. These are the available times that we have in our office for you to be able to come in. Now, total transparency. If you were not to come to an event like this and you just call my office, it's usually an average of a 2-week wait list before you can come in to get the testing done. So we are basically, I put down specific times available for you so I can subskirt you in before the 2-week period. I'd like to give you a little bit of love by saying you get a direct access pass. You don't have to wait the 2 weeks. What I ask you to do is circle the time that would be the best for you. For example, if you're saying Monday at 10 would be a great option, you would circle that. But then secondly, circle another fallback time in case Monday at 10 is already taken. Put a star next to the one that you want and put a circle around the one that you would prefer afterwards. Does that make sense? It's pretty easy. I at least would ask, obviously, put your name and your information. And then the retail price, again, is $8.97. So if you're going to do this, slash through that, write $4.97, and then sign your name underneath it. Is that okay with all of you? Like, it's really not that complicated. But here's what usually will then happen. There will be a long line. Over there in the corner, you guys see that sign that says VIP guest? When we break in just a moment, if you're going, that's me, that's it, all I ask is that you stand up, you head over there. My team can answer any question you have. They can work with your scheduling. They can show you how it works. And in regards to scheduling the appointment time, you just simply need to talk to them. They're going to give you all the information, your paperwork, the packets. They'll connect with you in every means possible. Does that make sense to you all? The number one question we usually get is this, okay? What about my insurance? Do you guys not take it at all? And that's not necessarily true. The only difference is that if I was to file these tests to your insurance, the fee would be about $897. So what we're doing is we're subskirting the initial cost by saying the first 3 are reduced, and then when we test them and find out what's going on, we'll call your insurance and say, what kind of benefits do you have as far as helping them from that point forward? Because right now, they don't cover these tests, they don't cover the therapies. I'm trying to say I will act as if I'm an insurance company for you, helping you guys to save some money. Does that make sense? That's simple, okay? Now, real quick as we kind of wrap up. When we test the nerve system, there is newer technology that now exists called thermography. It is a very specific scanner that we can run up your back, and it can show us if that first cervical nerve is damaged. It's amazing. We run this thing up your back, and it shows where the irritation is. Once we do that, we understand that fixing this nerve is going to then reset the body, and we can actually then retest you. This is something else I was going to show. So remember how we had the gentleman I showed with his spine being compressed? When I see this, if we lift this joint through a simple technique of an adjustment, we can re-x-ray you right after your first session. This is where it's wild. One session. He came in, he came back, I did one therapy, and look what happened. That gives me the green light to say guaranteed. Guaranteed. Because if the nerve releases, the body will fix itself. Now watch. It also tells me how long will this take. Because the amount of movement that happens within the first visit is based upon how long it's been there. If it's been there for 40 years and it moves 20%, then I know it's repairable, but it's going to take longer than if it moved 60% or 80%. Just to give you an idea, when I did this on his second visit, which is when we re-x-ray everything, it gives me the predictive time. So I said, okay, listen, I would like to see you, my clicker's dying, follow through this program for 4 weeks. I want you to get adjusted to clear the nerve system. I want you to clean out your gut and the diet. And I'm going to show you how to pull these chemical toxins out. 4 weeks, and then I want you to just walk right in, sit in front of my x-ray, and get it taken on your own. 4 weeks. And at that point, I said, well, you know what? Now you should be able to maintain the majority of this stuff. You'll know how to clean out your diet. We can continue the detox, and I'd like to check up with you. I met with him just this last week, and he has been stabilized and kept it himself this way for the entire time frame between June till now, and is off all of his medications, every single one of them. Wow. Also, he told me that he was having issues where his hands were shaking and trembling like this, and his doctor said, well, that could either be Parkinson's disease, it could be a neurological tremor, a tic. We have no clue. He was going to neurologist after neurologist. Gabapentin he would take to try to calm his hands down, and within the first month, his hands stopped shaking. I promise you, you open the nerve, you clean your gut out, it works every single time. What I'm offering you is a testing day, blood work, urine work, the meta-oxy, the scans. I'm offering you the chance to get one therapy session for us to retest you, and then I'm offering you an hour of my time to say, here's what I found, here's what changed, here's what you should do, here's how your insurance is going to help, here's how we're going to help, and do you want to do this? It's that simple. And just like we said earlier with Debbie, if you say, it's my moment, it's my day today, then all it is you just have to make that decision, walk right over there, and they'll take care of you. If you're like, I'm not ready for it, I totally understand that. But make the decision today, because it'll be the best day for the rest of your life. Got it? Are we good? Beautiful. Thank you guys so much for coming today. It's like we ended with a clap of thunder, didn't we?